Toy Story, perhaps the most iconic 3D animated film of all time. Breaker of so many records and still a great watch to this day, nearly 27 years later. This film made mine and many other childhoods, and I believe it is well worth remembering that with all the new and awesome 3D animated projects we have nowadays, Toy Story and Pixar are to thank. With that being said, this video will function on a chapter-based format. You can skip ahead and back to whichever parts appeal to you most using the timecodes below. Or you can sit here and watch the whole video, which would be pretty awesome of you. It would also be awesome if you would consider liking and subscribing. I'm a small creator, so any amount of engagement means the world to me. With that being said, enjoy the video. Before we begin talking about the film, I think it is extremely important for us to first talk about the animation studio responsible for it. Pixar. Perhaps the most well-known and highly respected animation studio there is, responsible for your childhood, whether you know it or not. The studio, however, didn't start out with the generic studio startup like you might expect, whatever the hell that means. In fact, I'll bet you didn't know that the origins of Pixar are highly connected to Steve Jobs, George Lucas, Francis Ford Coppola, and even Chuck E. fucking Cheese. But, we'll save the Chuck E. Cheese story for another time. But it started small and humble, with a small team founding the company in 1974 when New York's Institute of Technology, or the NYIT for short, Alexander Schur, established the Computer Graphics Lab with the intent of creating the world's first computer-animated film. For context, this was way before even the likes of films like Star Wars existed, so computer animation was little more than a pipe dream. A pipe dream this team was determined to follow through on. It was at this time, though, that the studio realized they would need a proper film studio to make good on this vow. Thankfully, Francis Ford Coppola came along and invited them to his house for a 3-day media conference where they encountered none other than George Lucas. There, George offered them a job at Lucasfilm's computer division. Now, as anyone who has seen the prequels knows, George Lucas has always had a passing interest, let's say, in computer animation and effects. Believe me, he wears that on his sleeve. So for the next few years, the team would work under Lucasfilm and continue to develop experimental technologies in the CG landscape, including particle systems and such. Fast forward a few years to 1983, where the team hires someone new to the team. Someone who had recently been fired from Disney and was looking for a career in computer animation. They hired John Lasseter. While he was only hired as an interface designer at the time, he would later make a name for himself in the company with his help in developing the short film The Adventures of Andre and Wally B. Eventually, the team would develop a powerful new computing device used for CG animation, with one of the staff members coming up with the name Picture Maker. Although other members would discuss the name further and eventually settled on the short name of the Pixar, or Pixar. This device would end up being sold to medical industries for use in hospitals. But despite this, unfortunately, the company still wasn't making money. And as such, George Lucas sold his computer division in 1986. However, when asked if the team could spin off the division into its own company, George allowed it, and thus Pixar was born with the same team as they had used under Lucasfilm. Now, with that being said, they would need to find a new investor. This is where Steve Jobs comes in. Yes, the very same Steve Jobs responsible for Apple and, this. Steve was inspired by the team's goal to create the world's first computer-animated film, and agreed to help them by purchasing the company in 1986. For $5 million. He would invest a further $5 million into the company out of curiosity for what they might accomplish. One of the first major short films to come out of the newly formed Pixar was entitled Luxo Jr., in which starred what would later be their iconic mascot, a simple desk lamp. This was the first computer-animated film to be nominated for an Academy Award. The film served as a beacon of light for the people working under Pixar, and would inspire them to work harder. Thus, why every Pixar film now opens with this lamp. From here, the studio would continue to develop more short films, many of which have since gone on to garner critical acclaim and are iconic for representing the studio's beginnings. But they were still thinking big, and some more time passed. Eventually, Walt Disney would take notice of the company, and even use their technologies in some of their films, such as The Rescuers Down Under, released in 1990. Finally, they got their chance. Lasseter was given the opportunity to pitch a film to Disney, that film being about a group of toys, and to his and the team's delight, Disney agreed to fund the project. Thus began the creation of Toy Story. With a new lease of $26 million in funding, the team began work on what would be the first in a 3-film deal with Walt Disney Studios. and a beginning of a whole new legacy. That being said, the film was not without its issues during production. The at the time Disney CEO, Jeffrey Katzenberg, pushed the team to make the film edgy, which led to early storyboards for the film where Woody was, well, just take a look.
Woody! I'd just like to wish you luck. I know you'd do the same for me.
Oh, yeah, well, yeah, there you go.
Whoa! Whoa!
What? What are you, what's everybody looking at? What? Hey, he slipped. I tried to, I couldn't hold that. It was he slipped. Hey, I don't see him. I think he fell onto the street.
Yeah, he's as good as roadkill. He ain't going to pizza now.
Woody, you deliberately threw Buzz out the window.
Hey, it's a toy world.
Cowboy, where is your honor, dirtbag? You are an absolute disgrace. You don't deserve to wear a 10-gallon hat on your pint-sized head. Men, search and rescue. I want a medevac team on the double. Hustle up. Move it.
Hey, spuds for brains. What do you think you're doing? Off the bed. Hey, off the bed!
You gonna make us, Woody?
No, he is. Slinky! Slinky! Get up here and do your job! Are you deaf? I said take care of them!
I'm sorry, Woody, but I have to agree with them. I don't think what you did was right.
What? Am I hearing correctly? You don't think I was right? Who said your job was to think, Spring Wiener?
Well, I just thought that
use
you...
this vast reserve of brain power to consider this for a moment. If it wasn't for me, Andy wouldn't pay any attention to you at all. In fact, my sketchy friend, you would have been hauled away to Goodwill a long time ago, so shut your mouth and get them off the bed. Do it. Now, Slink, or I'm throwing you off!
Yeah, that wasn't gonna work. So the team went back to the drawing board and began completely redesigning Woody's character, making him a much more likable protagonist, while still keeping some elements of his ego, so that he would still have room to grow. The initial concept for the film, revolving around toys, was a mixture of John Lasseter's idea and also a spin-off of one of their previous shorts, Tin Toy, in which they got their first experience animating both toys and humans, with the human in question looking like, That's way scarier than the horror games I've covered on this channel, and those are actually meant to be scary. Anyway, the team realized that due to the plasticky sheen that appeared in most 3D animations at the time, it would be smart to focus on the plastic characters to make it less noticeable. And thus toys were a no-brainer for the main characters of the film, with humans making minimal appearances in it. Dear Lord have mercy. Anyway, during final production, after a script had been settled on, the team was working diligently away at creating the film. Some of them worried about how the film might be perceived. Steve Jobs, however, was not one worried about the project, supposedly even going as far as to show friends of his clips from the movie early. He even took to a keynote session to discuss the film before its release in November of 1995.
160 billion pixels in this film, and 600 billion bytes. That's over 1,000 CD-ROMs to hold the data in this film.
Finally, the film was released to insane critical reception, receiving praise for its top-notch acting, animation, music, and just everything. The film was a massive success. Toy Story, as the name implies, is a story about toys. Mind-blowing, I know. In this universe, all toys are sentient and simply go limp whenever a human is nearby. We focus on a group of toys owned by the kid, Andy. Woody, the cowboy doll, is the leader of these toys, and after a routine playtime, they learn that Andy's birthday is today. The toys begin to freak out about being replaced by new toys, but thankfully it does not appear he gets any toys that could replace him, until the ending when Andy opens a surprise gift and is revealed to be the new hot action toy, a Buzz Lightyear action figure. Buzz quickly usurps Woody as Andy's new favorite toy, and in a fit of jealousy, Woody accidentally knocks Buzz out of the window, and is instead chosen by Andy to accompany him to a restaurant instead of Buzz, who he cannot find. There, Woody is separated from Andy and meets up with Buzz. The two attempt to enter the Pizza Planet establishment to find Andy, but are instead found by the evil kid neighbor, Sid, who is known for torturing toys. He takes them home and introduces them to his workshop of horrors. I remember this thing used to scare me when I was little, and honestly it still gives me the creeps. Here, Woody and Buzz organize all of Sid's toys in a plan to break out of Sid's house, all the while traumatizing him for life. They are on a time limit though, as Andy will be moving out of the next door house soon, and so Woody and Buzz have to get to him before that happens. After an exciting escape, the toys are able to safely rendezvous with Andy's car as it's leaving, and thus they all lived happily ever after, until the 3 sequels. So, as discussed in great detail before, this was the very first 3D animated film at the time of its release, thus marking it as a huge stepping stone in the realm of computer animation. That being said, when compared to some of Pixar's modern offerings, this film has certainly aged, which is to be expected from 3D animation. It simply isn't as timeless as 2D animation might be. That being said, for a film that is nearly 27 years old, this film still looks incredible. I mean, compared to some of the animated trash that comes out even today, this movie was made with so much love and care put into every shot, and it shows. Sure, some of the characters look a little baby. Yeah, the decision to animate toys so as to mask the plasticky sheen seen on everything in this early animation is genius. I honestly cannot give enough props to Pixar's animation department for their work here. This film was a wonder at its release and still is to this day. Not necessarily in comparison to some of the newer releases, but just for how well it was handled at the time. This film was not only amazing on a visual standpoint, but also on a writing standpoint. Each of the major players has a complete character arc and is fully fleshed out, so I want to take a moment to look at some of these major characters. Woody. Woody is the main protagonist of the film, and his arc sees him learning to put aside his jealousy and make friends with Buzz. At first, he is seen going as far as to try and get rid of Buzz, but eventually the two become an inseparable duo. Woody, as a character, is the leader of Andy's toys, as well as having a bit of an ego he deals with throughout the film series. Woody does not have much in terms of special abilities outside of his simple pull string on his back, which can produce pre-recorded lines from his voice box. Buzz Lightyear. Buzz is the air-headed action figure, who at the beginning of the film does not realize he is a toy, believing he has crash-landed his ship on a strange alien planet. However, throughout the film, we see him come to terms with the truth as he eventually teams up with Woody and Sid's toys to get back to Andy. Buzz is an integral part of this film, and serves as an essential foil to Woody's negative traits, thus allowing both of them to grow as characters. In terms of special abilities, given his action figure status, he runs on batteries to produce various sound effects, as well as a small laser pointer light, which for a while he is convinced is an actual laser. Andy. As a whole, we don't spend too much time with Andy in this film, given that the team wanted to limit the amount of time spent with the humans, due to the limited animation techniques available to bring him to life at the time. That being said, his presence is constantly felt, as Woody and Buzz want to get back to him, and his name is written on the bottom of the toy's feet serves as a constant reminder of their goals. Mr. Potato Head. Mr. Potato Head serves as another foil to Woody in this film, with him quickly taking any opportunity to mock Woody, even before Buzz shows up. After Buzz shows up, though, he begins to more directly challenge Woody, until he eventually convinces the other toys that Woody murdered Buzz. This plays into his final attempts to get onto the moving truck as well, with Potato Head actively trying to stop Woody from reaching it until he realizes his mistake. In terms of abilities, he has the unique one of being able to retain control over his individual body parts, even when separated from himself, although we don't see much of that in use here. Sid. Sid serves as the main antagonist for the film, with him kidnapping Woody and Buzz and planning to do awful things to them. That being said, he receives a proper traumatization at the end of the film for his crimes, and thus it is dealt with. Overall, though, I don't have too much to say about him, outside of the fact that he exists and is the villain. Slinky Dog. Slinky serves as Woody's loyal second-in-command, and is the last toy to believe in Woody before even he must turn his back on him, believing what Potato Head said to be true, a mistake he makes up for in the ending when he helps Woody and Buzz get back to Andy. Anyway, with that, I've discussed all the major characters in the film. I'd love to go over every other character like Rex and the Army Men, but given they don't play too importantly into this film's narrative, I will save them for another time. As discussed earlier, this film made a major splash with its premiere, but what about its legacy? Well, you don't need me to tell you that this is still an incredibly lucrative franchise, given the release of Lightyear this year, which, if everything goes as planned, then this video should release in the same day as that film. On top of that, there have also been 3 direct sequels to this film, and I don't doubt Disney won't try to milk it for all it's worth in the coming future with like 50 Lightyear sequels. That being said, I think it's also important to note what this film did for Pixar, because it put them on the map. It's the reason we have all those other brilliant Pixar films we have today, and it's the reason that so many of us have grown up loving animation the same way we have. This film was monumental in pushing 3D animation forward, leaving the door open for so many other studios to try their hand at the medium. While it is sad that nowadays it has completely replaced 2D animation, it is still important to acknowledge how amazingly this form of animation can be used. I mean, just look at Spider-Verse, Lego Movie, or Arcane. Those would never have happened if it weren't for Toy Story. Truly, this film has left a massive legacy, and it is well deserved. So, we've reached the end of the video. Overall, to summarize my opinions on the film, I love it. I used to watch this movie on loop, and I do mean on loop when I was little. I would sit there all day and just rewatch the film back to back to back. I don't really know why I did this, but I did. And as such, I can quote large swaths of the film from memory, if not the entire thing. This is one of my favorite movies of all time, and I cannot thank Pixar and its team enough for creating this wonderful film. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed the video, and if you have, then consider leaving a like and subscribing. Ram your mouse into that bell button and tell me something in the comments down below. Again, I'm a small creator, so such small things like that really do help. Consider checking out some of my other videos like this too, like my Security Breach or Plants vs. Zombies videos. Anyway, I'll see you around.